You're watching 7th Circle Gaming, and today we're going to analyze the game Neon White. And we'll get started here in just a second with full disclosure, and I'll invite you to pause the video now and read through these items at your leisure, or if you'd prefer not to, we'll move right on to the screenshots. And it certainly seems from all of our experience that Neon White can really be told with 3 screenshots in particular. The first one that we're going to share with you is just an illustration of what the game world itself looks like. It's somewhat real world inspired with significant fantasy elements. Obviously, it's a first person perspective. The user interface is also pretty minimalistic, and the playing card like items are as much combat abilities as they are traversal powers, because traversing the level is the primary point of the game, because the objective is to traverse the level in the fastest time and find first the collectible and reach the fastest time on the level and earn the ace medal. And then obviously eventually to move up the leaderboards, which the game certainly has. Now, those collectibles that we mentioned earlier are going to figure into the third major part of the game, which is the story. And the story of Neon White is told through these visual novel style cutscenes. And with that, that's all the screenshots that we really have to share. So let's move on and look at the scores. For Immersion, which attempts to answer the question, what does the game do to draw players into the game world? It's earned an 8 out of 15. It uses 3 methods to get players invested in the game world. Firstly is presentation. Yes, like we just saw, the game is presented in a first-person perspective. There are some fantasy elements. However, since the primary point of the game is traversal, those are less enemies than they are obstacles. So the player isn't really likely to recognize them as demons or anything truly a fantasy creature. On the other hand, gravity works exactly like it would in the real world. Secondly, Neon White is going to be using score attack to immerse players into the game world, and the game awards players with medals and collectibles based on level completion time, like we saw in that second screenshot. And the third thing that the game uses to get players invested is that story. All of the events are told as part of a larger plot, which we aren't going to spoil, but those collectibles are going to figure into it. And since that's all there is to say about Immersion, we're going to move on to difficulty. And difficulty is a bit of a nebulous concept, but in a nutshell, what it means is how does the game handle difficulty, and do any of the programming decisions make the game more difficult than it should be? Or, in other words, contribute to the difficulty. In Neon White's case, the user interface is minimalistic, it's readily understandable, the key inputs are not overly complicated, and the game is perfectly functional with a gamepad or a keyboard. So no negatives, all positives. The game has earned a 7.5 out of 15. And let's move on to Lasting Appeal. And Lasting Appeal attempts to answer the question of what does the game do to get players playing through the game a second time, or to keep it installed on their hard drives over the long term. Neon White, as we mentioned a couple of times now, is a story-based game, so it doesn't really change. In a second or third or fourth playthrough, achieving an ace medal on each level is somewhat compelling, so that will certainly give players reason to retry a level times to get that and move up the leaderboards, sure. On the other hand, the game does not at present have any DLC, and it certainly doesn't support mods because the ability to mod gravity or something like that might make the game entirely too easy. So the game has earned a 5 out of 15 for lasting appeal. And on that note, we'll end on and finish up with the overall score. Overall, on White has earned a 6.8 out of 15. It has simple and very functional gameplay. We certainly didn't uncover any glitches or software errors in any of our evaluation sessions. Receiving the medals and traversing the level for that fastest time certainly may be compelling. Some players will also find the story interesting. The game certainly achieves the 30 seconds of fun gameplay ideal. And with that, we are going to put the objectivity aside and move on to a slightly subjective statement, and might even be controversial. So definitely grains of salt over both shoulders, and skeptic meters turned all the way to 11. The game certainly could be said to use many of the same tricks that mobile games use to get players addicted to them. And on that note, without wishing to inflame the community any further, we'll end and say congratulations. You have reached the end of the video. Have you played Neon White yourself? What were your experiences like? Leave those in the comments section below. If there's a game you'd really like to see analyzed on the channel, go ahead, post that in the comments section below. Share the video, do all the other YouTube things. And from 7th Circle Gaming, good